Discover 12 sinistras lendas de Novo México. Assombrosas telas reveladas que chilam seu espinho. As Jenna piou através da janela de sua vitoriana casa em Silver Creek. She felt as though she could see darkness creeping along the quiet streets. O sol dipou low, trouxendo éreas sombras através do craque do piso. Era pitoresco, Cher, mas também inquietante. Aquele tipo de lugar onde a inocência simples mascara horrores silenciosos, onde sussurros de sinistras lendas externam justo debaixo da superfície. Sua nova vida havia começado com promessa, uma chance de escapar o caos de Albuquerque e ignar sua criativa espírito. Mas este town felt too still, too watchful, like eyes lurking just out of sight. She tried to shake that feeling as she unpacked boxes, yet the air seemed thick with tension. Shadows flickered on the edges of her vision, just there and then gone. A night wind whispered through the trees, interminglando with haunted echoes that made her heart race. What was happening here? Shiver ran down her spine as she pensou dos locais, seus olhos estranhos, conversas apressadas quando inquiria about the town's history. Oh, nothing to worry about, they'd say too quickly. Jenna grimaced. Os ghost stories felt reais, especialmente após reunir-se ao par de Eldaris neighbors que espocavam em tons baixos about a family that had vanished one fateful winter night. O inseguro murmúrio de silêncio drapou ao redor de sua família as o sol se punha. Mark, seu marido, sentia-se distraído, nervosamente glançando aos cantos dos remos. They would sit at the table, thick tension hanging in the air like fog. O cheiro de dinheiro bem reemplaçado por awkward silêncio. You feeling okay, love? She asked, trying to break the spell of dread. Just tired, he'll reply, avoiding her gaze. As that night deepened, Jenna knew she had to explore the basement, her creative instincts urging her on. O velho door crecou aberto, revelando densas como saudade. Faint hum ecoou aos fundos das dampes paredes, sentindo ripples de dread crawlando por suas mãos. Heart racing, she strained to listen, feeling her breath hitch and taut. Muffled sounds lurking just out of reach. Cold draft swept through the basement, flicking those tiny hairs on her neck. It was chilling. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Just as that warming thought of sharing connection faded, a loud crash reverberou through the house, making her heart stop. Terror gripou seu insides, like uma vice a chipiara em tuas devras veló. O que era? The echoes alert do move a fear. Every instinct clashed, driving her to retreat, but her body stayed rooted in place. She swallowed hard, realizando que os rumores she had brushed off as mere folklore were alive around her. Uma forgotten darkness creeping through the fabric of her new life. Could she trust the shadows whispering truths she had yet to understand? Or would their insistent call lead to destruction? As apprehension flooded her, Jenna faced the abyss lurking below, knowing only that the truth awaited her, but at what cost? Jenna's heart hammered in her chest as she registrared the silence que followed the crash. It was the kind of silence that felt heavy, as if the very air had thickened. Panic began to bubble in her throat. Should she call for Mark? But as the dread seeped deeper into her bones, she realized he wouldn't hear her over the rush of adrenaline that now coursed through her veins, loud and deafening. Taking a steadying breath, she reached for the flashlight she had stashed in her pocket. The beam flickered to life, casting a narrow circle of pallid light onto the staircase. Each step creaked under her weight, the sound echoing in the stillness like a warning. She moved slowly, each footfall drawing her deeper into a world of uncertainty, a world that felt like it was swallowing her whole. Dread gnawed at her stomach as she descended. That humming sound grew louder, an unsettling melody that summoned shadows with it. The flickering bulb overhead buzzed, throwing sparks of light and dark across the cold stone walls. She strained to make out shapes, but the shadows danced just beyond her reach. "It's just the wind," she muttered, though she didn't quite believe it. Finally, she stepped into the basement, and the air grew even colder. It wrapped around her, squeezing tight. In the far corner, hidden under layers of dust, lay something that looked like an old trunk. Jenna's pulse quickened. The trunk was the reason she was down here after all, right? She needed to know what it hid. Approaching it, she noticed the faint, worn symbols carved into the wood. They twisted and turned, their meanings lost to time. But they thrummed with energy. It was as though the trunk was alive. Her fingers danced over the surface before she caught herself, pulling back instinctively. A sudden gust blew through the room, freezing her blood and extinguishing her flashlight. Darkness enveloped her like a suffocating blanket. "Jenna!" Mark's voice rang out, distant but growing closer. Relief surged through her, a temporary reprieve from dread. "Down here," she called, her voice trembling, but something deep inside her warned that maybe it was a mistake. She didn't want him down here, not with the ominous hum and the growing chill. The shadow seemed to whisper her fears, urging her to stay silent, to keep secrets. "Hang on, I'll be right there."
Sistema. Text-to-speech generation.
De momento ele mês contato, rumbo ecoou outra vez no basement, low, gutural som que vibrava pelo chão debaixo de Jenna. She stumbled backward, panic igniting again. "Don't touch it!" "Why not?" His voice held a mix of frustração e impaciência. "It's just a trunk." "No, Mark, it feels wrong. Something's off." Ignorando a sua warning, ele continuou a explorar a superfície, traçando os padrões com curiosidade. Jenna felt her heartbeat in her throat as she watched him, dread sinking deeper into her chest. Suddenly, the air shifted, a cold draft sweeping through a room, rattling the weak light bulb above them. It buzzed violently, flickering as dark whispers echoed once more. "Do you hear that?" Jenna asked, her breath hitching. "What?" Mark stepped closer to the trunk, oblivious to the atmosphere charging around them. "Those whispers, I think—" But before she could finish, the lid to trunk sprung open with a violent creak, sending out a cloud of dust that hung in the air like a thick fog. Both of them froze, staring into the yawning darkness of the trunk. Inside, there was nothing but an inky blackness that swallowed the light from above. They leaned closer, the shadows flickering like angry spirits. A sudden hissing noise emanated from within, curdling the air around them, an untamed thing, full of anger and promise. Mark, Jenna felt her pulse pound in her temples. We need to get out of here. Wait, he said, a spark of reckless fascination lighting his eyes. What if there's something in there, something valuable? No! She reached out, her hand grasping his arm, desperately pulling him back. You don't understand. You don't know what could come out. His expression shifted, a shadow passed over his features. The inviting pull the dark object was countered by the growing dread reflected in her wide eyes. Then the hissing turned into a low, guttural growl, resonating through the space. Jenna felt a darkness stir, alive and hungry. Maybe we should just close it? Mark suggested weakly, glancing nervously at the swirling shadows. As if in response, the darkness inside the trunk commenced to pulsate, swirling faster, coiling like a serpent ready to strike. The air quivered with anticipation, a magnetic force dragging them closer to the brink of decision. Just then, the basement door slammed shut again, and the echo filled the room with a bone-chilling finality. "Mark!" Jenna screamed, pushing him toward the door, but it wouldn't budge. The whispers intensified, an eerie chorus of voices laced with malice. "Stay. See what lies within." There, in the suffocating dark, she understood. The trunk was not just a mere object. It was a portal, a gateway to whatever lay beneath the silence they had long feared. Marks of old legends danced through her mind, warnings from the tales passed down through generations. As their breaths quickened, the shadows surged forward, hungry to escape their prison. They couldn't stay, yet escape felt impossible. "Mark, we have to make a choice," she gasped, heart pounding, the chilling realization settling over her. Suddenly, the trunk screamed. The sound echoed harshly, crashing against their eardrums, breaking the spell of dread. What would ensue next? Would they confront the darkness head-on, or would they succumb to the fear that gripped them? Time hung heavy between them, their fate teetering on a knife edge of decisions they could only begin to grasp. But an insatiable hunger lingered, and as they stood paralyzed in terror, the trunk beckoned them once more. The tension in the air thickened, a palpable dread that seeped into their bones. Mark's fingers hovered above the trunk, undecided, as if the very essence of the darkness inside called to him. The walls of the basement seemed to close in, the once familiar space now a suffocating tomb. "Jenna, think about it. What if there really is something valuable in there?" His voice was cautiously optimistic, but fear danced in his eyes, betraying his strong facade. Suddenly, a gust of icy wind rushed through the basement, tousling their hair and sweeping dust across the floor. Jenna's heart raced. There was a terrible weight in the atmosphere, as if the shadows themselves conspired against them. "Mark," she hissed, pulling on his shirt, urging him back. "This is insane. We can't take that risk." But he turned back to the trunk, a flicker of determination igniting within him. "But what if it could change everything? We need answers." Before she could reply, the hissing from the trunk escalated into a cacophony of whispers, each voice distinct yet overlapping, calling out desperately, "Join us! Join us!" Jenna's thoughts spiraled, images flashing through her mind. stories of lost souls, forbidden knowledge, and curses bound to the earth. The chest was no ordinary trunk. A sudden awareness struck her. One of the names whispered seemed eerily familiar. "Mark, I read about this. I think," her voice trembled as the truth clawed its way to the surface, "I think it's linked to that legend about the lost spirits." He hesitated, the thrill of adventure mingling with rising terror. What legend? The one about the people who opened a portal to the other side and were never seen again. Her palms turned clammy as panic rippled down his spine. "It calls to them, Mark. It draws them in, and they disappear forever." Mark's eyes widened, the shadows flickering behind him like wraiths hungry for flesh. "You can't be serious." At that moment, the air churned violently. The trunk rattled violently, as if some unseen force clawed to escape. The sounds morphed from a growl into a scream, a wailing shrill and agonizing that rocked them to their very core. "Get away from it!" Jenna screamed, shoving Mark backward. But the shadows surged forth, swirling around the trunk, dark tendrils reaching out as though to ensnare them both in their grasp. "Get away from it!" Jenna screamed, shoving Mark backward. Desperation clawed at Jenna as she tugged at the doorknob, her fingers slick with sweat. "Please, we have to leave now." "Wait!" Mark shouted, but she didn't stop. The chilling realization washed over her. If they didn't escape now, they might end up part of the legends they had only heard in hushed tones. The door shook as she pounded on it, blood rushing in her ears. The whispers turned into frenzied screams, echoing with agony and fury, twisting around them. "Stay! It's not yet time!" The grip of dread tightened. Counting on pure instinct, Jenna yanked the trunk's lid down, slamming it shut. Instantly, the whispers faltered, silence crashing down upon them like a tidal wave. Mark stumbled back, staring at the trunk as though it had just lunged at him. What did we just do?" The shadows receded, hissing in frustration that vibrated through the floor, the air electric with wrath. But a dark promise lingered in the newfound silence. It wasn't over yet. Then the basement light flickered again, illuminating something strange. A glimmer beneath the trunk, something jagged and metal. With hesitant movements, Jenna knelt down, heart racing as she reached under. Her fingers curled around a small rusted key. The whispers returned, now soft and insistent. "Open, the truth awaits." The fear surged back, and Jenna's stomach twisted. She looked at Mark, the questions hanging heavily between them. What secrets had they locked away? And was that key their salvation, or the opening of a deeper nightmare? The darkness squirmed beneath them, and time was no longer on their side. Jenna stared at the rusted key, her heart pounding in her chest. The whispers grew louder, filling the basement with an aching urgency. "Open, the truth awaits." It echoed in her mind, scratching at her sanity. She wanted to scream, wanted to flee, but the key felt heavy in her palm, a weight that tethered her to the horror surrounding them. "What now?" Mark's voice broke through the haze, a tremor exposing his fear. He shifted nervously, glancing at the trunk as if it might spring to life again. What did we just do?" The shadows receded, hissing in frustration that vibrated through the floor, the air electric with wrath. But a dark promise lingered in the newfound silence. It wasn't over yet. Then the basement light flickered again, illuminating something strange, a glimmer beneath the trunk, something jagged and metal. With hesitant movements, Jenna knelt down, heart racing as she reached under. Her fingers curled around a small, rusted key. The whispers returned, now soft and insistent. "Open! The truth awaits!" The fear surged back, and Jenna's stomach twisted. She looked at Mark, the questions hanging heavily between them. What secrets had they locked away? And was that key their salvation, or the opening of a deeper nightmare? The darkness squirmed beneath them, and time was no longer on their side. Jenna stared at the rusted key, her heart pounding in her chest. The whispers grew louder, filling the basement with an aching urgency. "Open! The truth awaits!" It echoed in her mind, scratching at her sanity. She wanted to scream, wanted to flee, but the key felt heavy in her palm, a weight that tethered her to the horror surrounding them. "What now?" Mark's voice broke through the haze, a tremor exposing his fear. He shifted nervously, glancing at the trunk as if it might spring to life again. What did we just do?" The shadows receded, hissing in frustration that vibrated through the floor, the air electric with wrath. But a dark promise lingered in the newfound silence. It wasn't over yet. Then the basement light flickered again, illuminating something strange. A glimmer beneath the trunk, something jagged and metal. With hesitant movements, Jenna knelt down, heart racing as she reached under. Her fingers curled around a small, rusted key. The whispers returned, now soft and insistent. "Open! The truth awaits!" The fear surged back, and Jenna's stomach twisted. She looked at Mark, the questions hanging heavily between them. What secrets had they locked away? And was that key their salvation, or the opening of a deeper nightmare? The darkness squirmed beneath them, and time was no longer on their side.
Sistema.
Jenna held the leather book tightly against her chest. The weight felt heavier than ever, pulsing with dark energy. Even in silence, the fear thrummed through her veins. "Did we just trap ourselves?" Mark asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Outside, the world remained unchanged, but the basement felt like a cage, locked, twisted, and teetering on the brink of something unfathomable. And then a voice echoed from the trunk, low and chilling. "You opened the door. Now it will come for you." Jenna held the leather book tightly against her chest. The weight felt heavier than ever, pulsing with dark energy. Even in silence, the fear thrummed through her veins. "Did we just trap ourselves?" Mark asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Outside, the world remained unchanged, but the basement felt like a cage, locked, twisted, and teetering on the brink of something unfathomable. And then a voice echoed from the trunk, low and chilling. "You opened the door. Now it will come for you." Jenna and Mark exchanged terrified looks, and the realization sank deep. Some doors should never be opened. But now it was too late. Outside, the night loomed heavy, a foreboding shadow over their very souls. What awaited them now? They could only dread the next revelation. The air grew thick and electric, wrapping around Jenna and Mark like an invisible predator. The ominous voice lingered in the depths of their minds, each word weaving a sense of impending doom deeper into their bones. Mark stumbled back, nearly colliding with the wall. Was that real? He stared at the trunk with wide eyes, terror etched on his face. What have we done? Jenna's hands trembled as she opened the leather book again, sure that the knowledge within could somehow shed light on the darkness they had just invoked. The pages were yellowed and filled with twisted, scrawled handwriting that gleamed with an unsettling allure. "Look here, Mark," she said breathlessly, pointing to a passage filled with warnings. "Some doors should never be opened," it repeated over and over, like a dark mantra. The words slithered off the page, scratching at her mind, urging her to turn back, but there was no turning back now. As she continued reading, Mark's eyes darted around the basement, sensing an oppressive weight growing heavier. Shadows pulsed around them, thickening as if alive. And with every flicker of gloom, Jenna could almost hear the whispers returning, a seething tide demanding to be heard. Suddenly, the trunk rattled against the floor, as if something struggled within. Jenna gasped, dropping the book, her heartbeat pounding like a war drum. "What's happening? Maybe we should have just left it. We could have forgotten about it." Mark's voice cracked in panic, but Jenna knew fleeing was not an option. Their fates were tied to that book now. With a deafening crash, the lid of the trunk flew open again, unveiling a swirling darkness that coalesced into a formless shape, thrashing violently. It seemed to stretch and pulse, mockingly mimicking the contours of a body while remaining intangible. "Get back!" Mark yelled, instinctively pulling Jenna behind him. The dark figure swirled angrily, and Jenna could almost see the haunting features of the woman they'd glimpsed earlier, forming in the shadows, twisted and elongated, an expression of eternal agony on her face. "Let her go!" Jenna screamed, her voice rising above the howl of the shadows.
But their plea was met with silence, a chilling stillness that wrapped around them like a vice. Suddenly, the book began to vibrate in Jenna's grasp, as if trying to leap away. A cold sweat broke out across her forehead. "Mark, I think it wants this." She clutched the book tighter, the leather surface as cold as ice against her palm. "Don't you dare!" he hollered, panic escalating. "Do you even know what you're holding? We could be inviting death." But Jenna felt the book pulling at her soul, as if it understood her fears, and somehow craved her connection. The air thickened again, and the woman's face emerged more clearly, her expression shifting from pain to fury, beckoning for something Jenna couldn't decipher.
In a moment of clarity amidst the terror, Jenna understood this was about more than the book. It was about the stories within it. Each tale linked to the woman's anguished spirit, and in seeking knowledge, she had disturbed the dead, awakening the unrest of those who were meant to rest. "Mark!" Jenna shouted as the shadows lunged closer. "We need to finish this. We can't let it keep hunting us." "Finish what?" Mark shouted back, backing away toward the stairs leading up to freedom they doubted would still be waiting. "Find the truth," Jenna pleaded, urgency gripping her. "We need to know who she is and why this happened." The shadows curled around them, and the wails rose again, piercing their ears. With her heart racing, Jenna made a decision. "I'll open the book one more time." The moment she opened it, the dark shape lurched forward, a chaotic rush of sound filling the basement, drowning out everything else. "We need to know!" Jenna screamed, desperation etched into her every word. "What do you want from us?" The shadows twisted violently as the ground shook beneath them. A guttural sound erupted from the figure as it shrieked, echoing through the space. "You opened the door. Now you must pay the price." As the basement plunged into chaos, Jenna felt herself teetering on the brink of oblivion. All she could think was how far they had gone, how much they had lost. And as she braced herself for whatever was about to come, she caught a glimpse of the book's pages flipping wildly, hastily illuminating names and dates of those who long forgotten. Was there a way to reclaim her freedom from this eternal nightmare? Then the basement erupted into darkness. What awaited them now? Would the stories they uncovered return to consume their souls? Jenna felt the pull of the abyss as darkness enveloped them, swallowing the flickering light that had dared to survive the initial chaos. Mark grabbed her shoulder, his grip tight and urgent. "What now, Jenna?" His voice trembled, echoing against the walls as they stood suspended between hope and despair. She strained to see through the thick veil of night, but it was too dense, too oppressive. "I don't know," she shouted back, panic rising. "The book, it's showing something." Just then, the shadows parted briefly, un fractured image filled her vision. Un town, its streets lined with crumbling buildings, a chilling stillness hanging in the air. The book vibrated violently in her hands, whispering secrets that crept under her skin. Names began to rise from the page, words glowing ominously in the creeping darkness. "Jenna!" Mark's voice snapped her back. A shape loomed right behind him, swirling and writhing with menace. The features of the woman solidified, eyes blazing with a furious light, her mouth opening in a silent scream that tore through the air like shattering glass. "Move!" Jenna shouted, shoving Mark toward the nearby staircase. The violent energy of the shadows pushed back at them, each step feeling heavier, regret clawing at their hearts. The dark essence pulsed around them, and Jenna could almost hear the voices of the tormented souls that had been bound for centuries in the book. It was a chorus of anguish, seeking release, demanding recognition. They stumbled over cluttered debris as the unearthly wails shrieked in unison, mingling with their own labored breaths. Jenna could feel the urgency of the moment. If they didn't act soon, they would be trapped here forever. "Tell me what you see," Mark yelled, desperation lending urgency to his words as he glared back at the dark mass closing in. "The town! It's haunted!" Jenna gasped, her heart racing. "I think it might be our only chance. We have to finish the story." "Finish what?" Mark's voice was sharp with disbelief, glancing back at the woman's ghostly visage as it flickered in and out, fury radiating from its distorted face. "I think she wants us to learn about the others, the lost ones," Jenna cried, realization crashing over her. "If we can understand their tales, maybe we can help her." "Finish what?" Mark's voice was sharp with disbelief, glancing back at the woman's ghostly visage as it flickered in and out, fury radiating from its distorted face. "I think she wants us to learn about the others, the lost ones," Jenna cried, realization crushing over her. "If we can understand their tales, maybe we can help her." Mark's expression flickered between panic and understanding. "All right, let's finish it then. What do we need to do?" Jenna held the book tightly, her fingers trembling as she turned the pages, desperately seeking the truth within the horrific legends. The words began to take shape, guiding her deeper into the history that had long been shrouded. "Here!" she shouted, and Mark leaned closer, squinting at the scribbles. "There's a story about a girl named Isabel. She disappeared in the ghost town over 100 years ago, right before—" "Before what?" Mark pressed, his breath warm against her ear. "Before the shadows claimed the town." Jenna's heart raced as she read on, piecing together the fragments of a heart-wrenching tale filled with betrayal and loss. She was waiting for someone to find, and now they're linked to this darkness. We can't let it keep her trapped. As she recited the words aloud, the shadows wriggled and bent, twisting as if they were wrestling against an unseen force. The oppressive energy shifted, quaking around them, and the ghostly figure became agitated, the fury twisting to something more poignant. With her last breath, Jenna chanted the final lines, her voice rising above the tumult of the swirling darkness. And then came silence. The whispers halted, leaving only the sound of their hearts hammering in the haunting stillness. "What did we just do?" Mark whispered, eyes widening as a faint shimmer filled the basement. But before Jenna could reply, a blinding flash erupted from the book, and they found themselves standing in the ghost town from her vision, surrounded by ectoplasmic figures, trapped in a loop of despair. "Are you ready to discover the truth?" A voice echoed around them, deep and resonating. Jenna's heartbeat quickened. What had they stumbled into? Was this their salvation, or the deepening of their nightmare? And as the lost souls began to swirl around them, their hollow whispers calling for help, Jenna realized their journey was far from over. Jenna felt disoriented, her surroundings shifting like a mirage. They stood in the ghost town, the air thick with an unnatural haze, their breaths coming out in anxious puffs. The buildings, though crumbling, seemed to pulse with a life of their own, shadows darting in and out of the abandoned storefronts. Mark's hand gripped her wrist tighter, his eyes scanning the area. "What now?" he whispered,
barely audible over the rising whispers of the phantoms surrounding them. Their voices melded into a haunting chorus, weaving tales of woe and heartbreak, begging for recognition. Jenna looked around, desperate to find something, anything that could lead them to safety. We need to find Isabel, the girl from the story. She might know how to break this curse. As they moved deeper into the town, the echoes of the spirits intensified, swirling around them like a tempest. Faces emerged from the shadows, pinched and pleading, their mouths opening in silent screams. Jenna's heart raced as she felt their despair settle into her very bones. "Maybe we can talk to them," Mark offered, his voice cracking. "They must have answers." "Let's try," Jenna replied, trembling at the thought. She stepped forward, cupping her hands around her mouth. "Isabel, can you hear us?" The air became electric, the whispers morphing into sharp gasps. Suddenly, a figure flickered into sight, a girl with hollow eyes and a tattered dress that seemed to sway in an invisible breeze. You seek the truth?" Her voice drifted in, soft yet haunting. Jenna's heart spun at the sight. "Yes, we need to know what happened to you. Can you help us break the curse?" The ghostly girl nodded, but her expression remained sorrowful. "To learn the truth, you must face the shadows, the darkness that binds us." Mark shifted uneasily, glancing around as if expecting the shadows to pounce. "What do you mean?" "Isabel was betrayed by those she loved most," the spirit replied, her gaze distant, reliving the pain. "The darkness feeds off betrayal, and it feasts on the souls of this town." A frown creased Mark's brow. "Betrayal?"
But we didn't betray anyone. Memories. Mark's eyes narrowed. Memories? Maybe this place is built on them. They're feeding us their stories. Or trapping us, Jenna added, shivering. The last remnants of light seemed to swallow up their hopes as darkness licked at their heels. "Look!" Mark pointed to a dilapidated building. Paint peeled away like old skin, revealing only emptiness. Yet from within came the sound of children's laughter, a jarring juxtaposition to the eerie silence surrounding them. There was no joy here, only despair. Jenna hesitated. "Should we?" "Don't think, just move," he urged. There was a wild look in his eyes, the kind that stemmed from desperation. They began to approach the doorway, the laughter growing louder, yet more sinister, twisting into a mocking cacophony. Shadows darted in an unsettling dance around them as they crossed the threshold. Inside, the walls were lined with dusty portraits, familiar faces twisted in agony. Their mouths contorted into silent screams, eyes wide with terror. The children's laughter faded, replaced by a chilling silence that demanded to be acknowledged. "What is this place?" Jenna whispered, trembling. "An echo of betrayal," Mark muttered, slowly shifting the book in his hands. He flipped through the pages again, searching for answers. "This is where the stories are kept." Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted, and the oppressive darkness thickened. Jenna squinted, catching fleeting movements. She caught a glimpse of figures, adults and children alike, standing against the distant walls. Their eyes were hollow, gazing at nothing, yearning for acknowledgement. "Jenna," Mark's voice quivered, "they're trying to reach us." The shadows twisted closer, clawing at her sanity. "We need to know what they want," she shouted into the void, desperation rising in her throat. The shadows echoed her cry, 1,000 voices resonating like a chorus of agony. It was as though the air itself conspired against them. "Listen," Mark turned a page. "It says the stories must be told, or the past was never lived." But before Jenna could process his words, a face emerged from the darkness, illuminated briefly by an unseen light. A boy, no older than 10, with wide, pleading eyes. "Help us!" he screamed, the sound puncturing the choking silence. "If the stories don't leave, we can't! The boy's face twisted in frustration. Then, suddenly, he vanished, leaving only a lingering chill. Jenna felt a surge of panic. "Mark, we can't just give up. We have to uncover the stories, whatever they are." The walls groaned under the weight of unspoken confession, and Jenna instinctively reached for the book, feeling the cold leather against her skin. Flipping through, she felt something shift within her, a deep-seated fear of discovering what lay buried in the town's history. What happens if we do find out? "System," she asked, fear creeping in. But before Mark could respond, shadows began to swirl violently. Dark tendrils reached for them, tasting their fears, peeling away layers of their courage as the whispers grew louder, more frantic. "Face the darkness or remain eternally trapped," the voices cried out in anguished unison. Mark grabbed Jenna's hand. "We have no choice. We have to do this." Jenna's breath quickened, fear clawing at the edge of her mind. "But every story starts with a betrayal." The walls practically trembled in anticipation as shadows roared like a storm. And just as Jenna gripped the book tighter, the air shattered like glass, revealing a doorway shimmering with a sickly light. "Do you trust me?" Mark asked, his voice trembling. "No, but I have to," Jenna replied, and together they stepped toward the grotesque light, every ounce of despair clawing at them. What awaited them beyond that shimmering veil? Would it be the key to freeing the lost souls, or something far worse? Jenna and Mark emerged through the shimmering doorway, their hearts thrumming in sync with the restless energy that filled the air. The ground beneath their feet felt different, alive and pulsating, as though they had crossed into a realm where emotions coalesced into physical sensations. The familiar darkness lingered just outside, clawing for access. But now they were surrounded by a cacophony of colors and sounds, sighs of relief intermingled with mournful wails, laughter echoing through halls of despair. "What is this place?" Mark breathed, taking in the swirling, vivid environment. Silhouettes of familiar figures danced in and out of focus, their faces flung wide with expressions of longing and regret. "I think this is where the stories live, where they were trapped all this time," Jenna said. "We need to listen, to understand." As they approached a swirling mass at the center, echoes of lives unfulfilled washed over them. Stories revealed themselves, each one a brush against their psyche. Amidst this chaotic gallery of memories, faces materialized, lost children, forgotten families, and tortured souls wrestling with the past. Suddenly, the voice they had heard earlier rang out. "You've come to help us, or are you merely curious about our pain?" Jenna and Mark turned to see a figure coalesce from the swirling light. A woman, her face beautiful, yet overshadowed by sadness. She looked familiar, with striking resemblance to the woman they'd seen in the basement. "Isabel," Jenna whispered, recognizing the spectral figure. "You are the one who binds them?" "Indeed," Isabel said, sorrow pouring from her words. "My betrayal tore this town apart. To free us, you must confront my past, to share it with all who dare listen." Mark's brow furrowed. "What did you do?" "I loved him," Isabel replied, her voice laced with bitter regret. "I chose him over my family, and when the townsfolk found out, they turned against me."
Eu me tornei o embosimento de seus desfazes, forever entrelaçada com as sombras deste lugar. Para eraçar nossa treva, meu verdade musta ser dita. Jenna felt deep inspiração sovendo o ventre dela. O ar ao redor deles vibrava com urgente pull. Tell us tua história. Together we can break this cursed cycle. Isabel nodou. Com cada palavra, o passado se espalhava em seus bens. A raw pain, o torcido love que havia levado à betraição. Memórias flicaram a vivas. Isabel's laughter a meio do sol, followed by screams of fury from the crowd. Shadows folding over her heart like a vice. A horror de pain twistou em Jenna's gut, the weight of betrayal nearly choking her. As a tale unfolded, shadows began to retreat, tentatively withdrawing from the vivid colors illuminating the air. Isabel's angústia resonava, rapendo around Jenna's soul, every drop of pain unlike anything she had felt before. She channeled emotion into her voice, e com cada verso, they shared the burden of that dark history. As vozes ao redor deles começaram a sincar, ecoando Isabel's tale. We had lost the light, but now we reclaim it. Com o peso dessa verdade exposta, círculo de luz rapou ao redor de Isabel. As shadows riavam, desesperadas e furiosas, mas as últimas sílabas felhardas dos lábios, a ar ignou em brilhância, overwhelming the darkness that had haunted them for so long. Thank you. Isabel's luminosa figura glow brighter, the tortured edges of her existence softening as the chains binding the town slowly fell away. You've set us free. Jenna watched in awe as Isabel shimmered and began to dissolve into the whispers of light, scattering into what would become the fleeting memories of redemption. Mas as peace began to fill o espaço, deep rumble echoed into the air, e Jenna felt the ground shake beneath them. As shadows, driven mad pela defeat, swarmed, stretching towards Jenna and Mark, furious at their liberated souls. Not so fast! The tortured wail of the darkness crashed against their consciousness. You think you can walk away? This is your making! Run! Mark shouted, pushing Jenna toward the exit as the shadows lunged. They sprinted back toward the doorway glowing with light, dark tendrils wrapping around their ankles like chains, trying to pull them back into the abyss. Jenna could feel despair clawing at her heart, but she gritted her teeth and pressed forward through sheer will. As they crossed the threshold, Jenna felt uma explosión of energy, a surge of freedom and light. A shadow shrieked in agony, and they barreled through the shimmering veil. No, you can't escape. The undertone of darkness hoard, mas the weight of it lost its grip as they burst back into the basement. Panting and wild-eyed, they fell o' ground, the book clattering beside them. Silence in go forward room as they both stared at the trunk now closed tight. We did it? Mark asked breathlessly, disbelief coloring so voice.
Maybe, Jenna murmured, shaking, the remnants of fear still thick in the air. She reached for the book and opened it to the final pages, where the names of the lost had faded. They were released, their stories set free. In that moment, the basement felt lighter, no longer choked by the weight of darkness, but opened to the light. Jenna breathed in relief, yet a small part of her feared the shadows would come again. "Let's go upstairs," Mark said slowly, his voice steadying. "We need to be out in the sun, away from this place, together." As they climbed the stairs, emerged into the fading light of dusk, Jenna understood a truth. Life could not exist without acknowledging its shadows. But they had found hope, warmth, and each other. Together, they could face whatever stories lingered beyond the horizon. And as they stepped outside, the sun kissed their skin, a promise that tomorrow would bring light, regardless of the darkness they had faced. Jenna turned toward Mark, a smile breaking through the weight of the past. "We did it, really did, together." "Together," Mark echoed, squeezing her hand tightly. The haunting echoes of the past quietly faded into the twilight, leaving whispers of hope, reminding them that even amidst darkness, light would always find its way back home. It's time. If you want to keep the energy and excitement going, you need to subscribe now. Join us for more spine-tingling adventures and exclusive stories you won't find anywhere else. Smash that like button and feed the algorithm so we can bring you even more jaw-dropping tales. Don't wait even one more second. Flood the comments section with your reaction to this intense conclusion and share your theories about what comes next. Your voice matters, and we want to hear from you. And remember, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this wrap-up. Don't let them miss out on this gripping journey. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel, so let's take this community to the next level.